Can the hero of Harlem stop the lightning bolt of Freeland? Time to find out in Comic Book Fights. Hi, I'm Jason Edmond.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And welcome to Comic Book Fights, a new weekly video that we're going to do every single Tuesday. We're going to take two characters and we're going to put them through the paces. We're going to make them fight mano a mano, but we're not just going to make them fight because that would be dumb and boring. We're also going to talk about who has the better comic book stories, who has the best costume. We're going to decide end-all be-all, who's the better character through Comic Book Fights. All right, so let's start this fight. This fight is Luke Cage versus Black Lightning. Both two African-American superheroes who have had pretty stellar first seasons of their respective TV shows. So it's time to fight. I am representing Luke Cage. Ashley, who are you representing?
Black Lightning.
That's right. Okay, we're gonna go to round one, the fight. Ashley, let's talk about this. Why would Black Lightning beat the mother flippin' tar off of Luke Cage?
Well, to begin with, Black Lightning has metahuman powers, and
So does Luke Cage. But, yeah, keep going. Sorry.
but he has
I won't interrupt you, sorry.
offensive metahuman powers. That's fine. He can literally shoot lightning from his hands. Luke is bulletproof, but lightning still has to go to ground. He's not electricity proof. Black Lightning is way smarter than Luke Cage. He's higher educated, so he can probably outmaneuver Luke Cage in a pinch. He's always been a family man, so he has more at home to fight for. Luke doesn't become a family man until later. In fact, he operates for a long time as a sole figure, whereas Jefferson has a wife and usually one or two children, sometimes parents that he's looking to defend. So there's more at stake for him going into any given combat situation. He could trap Luke in one of his really cool lightning bubbles. He can also use the lightning to fly. He wears a super suit that enhances his ability.
Where's my super suit?
Exactly.
Sorry, not even referencing to Black Lightning. I apologize.
He wears a super suit that enhances his abilities, or at least on television he does.
Yes.
So in addition to his metahuman powers, he kind of gets an extra jolt if he needs it, and Luke Cage is strong, but he doesn't have that. And lastly, Black Lightning is a proficient martial artist, so if it came down to blows, he has a greater arsenal of moves at his disposal than Luke Cage might. That's my argument. All right, Jason, now tell me why Luke Cage would beat the ever-loving snot out of Black Lightning.
Well, Ashley, I'm gonna lay this fight down very simply because there's no contest in this round. And I forgot to mention very early on that we are going to be adults, unlike most of the internet, and we are going to determine through facts and through our arguments, we're going to convince each other to go each side. We're going to try to be as fair as possible. This, to me, is no contest at all. And I'm sorry, I picked the one that's going to take this round very easily because Luke Cage has superhuman strength. His strength initially was 5 tons. He could lift 5 tons, but he has actually undergone the process that gave him his powers several times, 3 times in fact. Now he can lift approximately 25 tons. That is a very strong human being.
It is.
He also has, it has been described that his skin is as thick as 4-inch steel. That means that no matter what, Jefferson Pierce cannot penetrate that armor. But this fight is all going to come down to invulnerability, which is Luke Cage's main strength. He is super strong. He is titanium steel. His muscles and his bone tissues are super dense. But you might be asking, well, Black Lightning's all electricity, right? How is this invulnerability gonna, track against, Well, I've done the research. Luke Cage has faced several electricity-based, and I have examples here.
Please cite your sources.
Yes, in the 70s, Luke Cage once fought a villain called the Constrictor. Now, the Constrictor is a guy in a bad purple lizard suit, but he has
like a boa constrictor.
Yes, he has little coils out of his wrists, and they have electricity in them. The electricity tendrils actually touched Luke, and Luke shrugged them off.
It's not a taser, it's lightning.
There was no effect with it. There was lightning on Constrictor's coils. Later, Luke Cage fought, and his name is Zax the Living Dynamo. Now, this is a creature who is basically pure electricity. Now, a normal human in non-conducting safety gear against electricity fought Zax the Living Dynamo. He was melted. Okay? The Hulk also fought Zax the Living Dynamo. Zax stunned the Hulk. Who is the one hero that was not affected by Zax the Living Dynamo?
Ambush bug.
Cage. Luke Cage was affected by the electricity, but was able to push it off and still kick Zax's ass. So to me, Zax, a living being of lightning, could not affect Luke Cage. So to me, that is where it is. All right, so let's go to the final arguments here. Ashley, this is where you could decide which one you're going to go for. Are you going to pick Luke Cage? You're going to pick Black Lightning based on these arguments? Who wins in a fight?
I will say, compared to Flash versus Arrow, I actually think this is a really hard decision to make.
No, not for me.
I think they're more evenly matched.
Sure.
I think it could be based on a number of factors. Based on the fact that Luke has taken down electricity-based foes before, though, I'm gonna give it to Luke Cage.
I agree. I have to go Luke Cage. That's why I said at the very beginning I thought this was that this round was a non-argument, because once I found the evidence, Zax the Living Dynamo is pretty powerful.
Villain for Luke Cage season 3.
We've seen Jefferson Pierce in the comics and in the TV show get quite winded when he expels a lot of electricity. And to me, I don't feel that Jefferson, from what we've seen so far, could generate the amount of electricity needed to take down Luke Cage. Now, Luke Cage is affected by electricity, but a living being of electricity couldn't stop him. I don't think Jefferson has a chance in heck. I'm giving this round to Luke Cage. So, all right, we both decided that Luke Cage wins round 1. All right, let's go into the second round, best stories. Ashley, tell us about some of Black Lightning's best stories. Let's find out who has the best comic book.
Well, just to begin with, just to talk about the TV shows really quick, Black Lightning has had more critical success in its first season than Luke Cage garnered in its first season. Black Lightning Year 1 is the story I first want to talk about in the comics. It's a really clean, pared down, updated origin that explains who Jefferson is and where Black Lightning came from. Luke doesn't have this. We've seen Luke's origin. We've seen it retold a number of times, but we don't have a nice, clean, modern update of what that is the way we have for Jefferson. So for Black Lightning, it's just an easier barrier for entrance than I think there is with Luke Cage. Justice League of America number 173 and 174, I think are really great Black Lightning stories. It's when Green Arrow, for the first time, kind of gets to open up the ranks of the Justice League and invite in some new people in the DCU. And the first person he chooses to pick up is Black Lightning, and he gets invited to join the greatest superhero team of all time. Say what you will about the Avengers. The Avengers are cute. Luke led them. That was adorable. The Justice League is the pinnacle of superhero teams, and he was handpicked to be a part of it. And then lastly, I want to talk about Batman and the Outsiders number 10. And basically, after his showing on Justice League, he's so great that Batman recruits Black Lightning, and we get to see him acting as a tactical strike agent for one of the coolest, most secretive teams. And I appreciate that these stories show us that Jefferson's a great team player. He's as excellent in a supporting role as he is in a leading role. And I don't know if we get that same kind of story for Luke. He's more of a duo guy. So those are what I think are some of Black Lightning's best stories. And frankly, the first season of the TV show is just so stellar. So how about you? Tell me about some of Luke's best stories.
Well, there have been some complaints about Luke Cage's first season, about how it being very uneven, so I'm not including it in this list, but I would consider that the first 6 episodes of Luke Cage season 1 have been pretty amazing. I have not finished season 2, so I cannot make that argument right as of the time of this recording.
I will agree with you about those episodes.
So I'm going to definitely point out The Pulse, number 11 through 14. This is where Luke and Jessica's baby is born, and you get to see, this is drawn by Michael Gaydos, you get to see the beginning of Luke and Jessica Jones' relationship, and you also get to see, like, sort of the current ending with a baby, which is very, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones' relationship is one of the most realistic relationships in comics, and to me, that's what makes it, you might be saying, like, oh, it's a Jessica Jones story, but it's about him as the great second half to Jessica Jones, which I think is just as valid. I gotta mention Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, number 8 and 9. This is the storyline where Luke Cage, hero of the 70s, runs over to Latveria and punches Dr. Doom in the face because he's negligent for $200. And he says the most famous line of Luke Cage, "Give me my money, honey." And I think you can't talk about Luke Cage without that, because Luke Cage don't back down from nobody. The biggest villain in the Marvel Universe, and Luke Cage doesn't back down. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention New Avengers number 1 through 5, which is a breakout. This is where Luke Cage finally becomes a member of the Avengers. This is written by Brian Michael Bendis. And Luke Cage has a major moment of beating down an electricity-based villain in this storyline, Electro. So I had to include that away. But this also begins Luke Cage as a leader, Luke Cage as a team member. Later in this run, he would go to lead what I think is one of the coolest groupings of Avengers ever, the New Avengers team, where it's like Ronin and Wolverine and Iron Fist and Black Suit Spidey and Doctor Strange, and they're living in the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's one of the best groupings of Avengers ever. So, all right, final arguments, Ashley. You've heard the cases for both. Who has the better storylines?
It's difficult to argue with
Give him my money, honey? I agree.
No, with the New Avengers, because Luke got to lead that team.
Yeah.
And as wonderful as I think these Jefferson stories are, and I still think the Justice League is way cooler than the Avengers, he hasn't led him.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot to be said about that character and about where that character stands in a company and from a publishing perspective. So I'm willing to concede to Luke Cage.
All right, interesting. So I originally was going to give this to Jefferson, I thought. I thought there was no way that Luke Cage could win this argument. But listening to your arguments, it is a lot of Jefferson, hey, Jefferson, come join our team. And at least the Luke stories are about how he evolves as a character, how he moves on, how he goes from common working the street, hero for hire, leader of the Avengers, how he goes from common hero for hire, great husband and father.
And I would argue that when they sort of came out of the womb, I think Jefferson came out a more fully realized human being, and I think Luke originally came out more stereotypical,
cliché,
archetypical.
Yep.
But I think Luke Cage has undergone more of an evolution since then than Jefferson, because Jefferson was maybe more fully formed in the beginning.
I agree. So I'm giving this round to Luke Cage. Are you giving this round to Luke Cage? All right, so Luke Cage wins best stories. Let's go into the final argument. Even though I think we know who's gonna win this fight. Best costume. Ashley, let's talk about that.
Luke doesn't have a costume, so how does this go to anything but Jefferson?
You know what I have to say to that? What do you do? Give me that money, honey. That's what I'm gonna say.
Jefferson has a super suit, and he has a super suit and an identity that actually protect who he is as a civilian. I think the wig is a bad choice. I think it's dumb.
Jefferson's crow wig.
I hope we never see it on television.
I actually really hope we see it on television.
But to its credit, and the fact that it disappears into the glasses/goggles combo. All of Jefferson's costumes do an excellent job actually obscuring his identity, and they're actual traditional, good old-fashioned superhero costumes. They're not just a hoodie, man.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how you could possibly give it to anyone but Jefferson.
Yeah.
So tell me about Luke Cage's yellow t-shirt.
Luke Cage has a hoodie, which I think is symbolic. Luke Cage also has the yellow shirt with the chains wrapped around his arms, which is really good. But I would be remiss if I did not talk about the best costume of the 70s. That's right.
The crown?
Fro up top, tiara across that forehead, chains for belts, and a ripped open yellow shirt so he can show his chest to the ladies. It takes balls to rock a costume that hard.
No, I'm not giving you this one.
I mean, let's go to final arguments. You're right. Luke Cage doesn't really have a costume.
Yeah.
Black Lightning's updated costume, where it's black and it has the blue stripes here, is what I call his Brad Meltzer Justice League costume, is a really good costume. It's a really cool looking costume. And when we even saw it in live action, it looks better than the suit they ended up using anyway.
I don't hate the Dayglow costume. I know you have a bunch of feelings about it.
I do.
But I was confident I was going to at least take this round.
Well, you know what? Final argument for me, I'm going to give this ruling to Black Lightning.
Yeah, I'm also going to give it to Black Lightning.
I'm really actually happy that Black Lightning got one. All right, so we're going to tally up the points. Luke Cage wins fight. Luke Cage wins best stories, but Black Lightning pulls out with best costume. That means that Luke Cage is the winner of Luke Cage versus Black Lightning. And if you're curious about any of the comic book storylines that we've talked about in this video, we have a link to an Amazon influencer sponsor list down below in the description. You can click on that link. You can go find all of these comic books, buy them on Amazon. They'll come right to your house. A little piece of that comes back to us to help support the channel. If you want to suggest a future comic book fight, go down to the comments, and while you're down there, click subscribe.
And for more exclusive geeky content, check out patreon.com/Jawin. Come join us in the Hall of Justice and be a super friend.
See you around the channel for more DC TV recap and Top 10 Arrow.